The Servant Girl Annihilator, a title both ominous and perplexing, stands as a haunting specter in the annals of American crime history. Yet despite its chilling moniker and the terror it instilled in late 19th century Austin, Texas, this enigmatic serial killer remains largely forgotten amidst the chronicles of more notorious murderers. In this documentary, we embark on a journey to unmask the Servant Girl Annihilator, delving deep into the shadows of the past to reveal the truth behind these heinous crimes. The significance of the Servant Girl Annihilator case extends far beyond its grisly details. It serves as a stark reminder of the vulnerability of society, even in the supposed safety of one's own home. As we peel back the layers of history, we uncover a city gripped by fear, a community shattered by violence, and a law enforcement system ill-equipped to confront such a malevolent force. This case serves as a cautionary tale, urging us to confront the darkness that lurks within our own society and to never forget the victims whose lives were senselessly cut short. Our goal in this documentary is twofold: to shine a light on this forgotten chapter of serial killer history and to uncover the truth behind the murders that terrorized Austin over a century ago. Through meticulous research, interviews with experts, and examination of historical records, we aim to piece together the puzzle of the Servant Girl Annihilator's identity and motives. By doing so, we hope to honor the memories of the victims and provide closure to their descendants, while also shedding light on a case that has long been relegated to the shadows of history. In the 1880s, Austin, Texas, was a city in transition, grappling with the aftermath of the Civil War and undergoing rapid urbanization and industrialization. Established as the capital of the Republic of Texas in 1839, Austin had grown steadily over the decades, fueled by an influx of settlers drawn to its fertile land and abundant natural resources. By the 1880s, it had emerged as a thriving center of commerce, culture, and government, poised on the cusp of a new era of prosperity. The social and cultural atmosphere of late 19th century Austin was characterized by a blend of tradition and modernity as the city navigated the complexities of post-war reconstruction and the challenges of urbanization. While Austin retained its distinctive Texan identity, it was also influenced by broader trends sweeping the nation, from the rise of industrial capitalism to the emergence of new forms of leisure and entertainment. At the same time, however, Austin was a city deeply divided along racial and socio-economic lines. The legacy of slavery and segregation cast a long shadow over the city, with African Americans and other marginalized groups facing systemic discrimination and disenfranchisement. Despite the abolition of slavery following the Civil War, racial tensions simmered beneath the surface, exacerbated by the resurgence of white supremacist groups and the imposition of Jim Crow laws. In the wake of the Civil War, Texas grappled with the challenges of Reconstruction as federal authorities sought to dismantle the vestiges of the Confederacy and establish a more equitable society. However, the promise of freedom and equality for African Americans was short-lived, as white supremacist forces regained control of state and local governments, enacting a series of discriminatory laws and policies aimed at reasserting white supremacy and subjugating African Americans. In this climate of racial hostility and inequality, African Americans in Texas faced pervasive discrimination in every aspect of life, from education and employment to housing and public accommodations. Lynchings and other acts of racial violence were common, as white mobs sought to maintain their grip on power and intimidate African Americans into submission. Against this backdrop of racial tension and inequality, the Servant Girl Annihilator case unfolded, further exacerbating the fear and mistrust that gripped the city of Austin. As we delve deeper into the mystery of these heinous crimes, we cannot ignore the broader social and historical context in which they occurred, nor the profound impact they had on the lives of all those who called Austin home. The first known murders attributed to the Servant Girl Annihilator occurred in the early hours of December 30th, 1884, when two young women, Molly Smith and Eliza Shelley, were brutally attacked in their home on West Pecan Street in Austin, Texas. Both women were employed as domestic servants and lived with their employers, making them vulnerable targets for the killer. The assailant gained entry to the house through a window, bludgeoning Molly Smith with an axe and sexually assaulting Eliza Shelley before fleeing into the night. The following year, on May 6, 1885, the servant girl Annihilator struck again, claiming the lives of two more victims, Irene Cross and Clara Strand. Like Molly Smith and Eliza Shelley, Irene Cross and Clara Strand were young African-American women working as domestic servants in Austin. Their deaths bore all the hallmarks of the previous attacks: a brutal assault with an axe, followed by sexual assault and mutilation. Despite the diversity of the victims in terms of age, race, and socioeconomic status, there were striking similarities between the murders attributed to the servant girl Annihilator. In each case, the victims were young women working as domestic servants, often living in close proximity to their employers. The killer targeted them in their own homes, usually in the dead of night, gaining entry through open windows or doors. The modus operandi of the killer was consistent across the attacks, with each victim subjected to a brutal assault with an axe or similar blunt instrument. After incapacitating his victims, the killer would then proceed to sexually assault and mutilate them, leaving behind a gruesome scene of carnage. The sheer brutality of the attacks, coupled with the apparent randomness of the victims and the method of entry, sent shockwaves through the community and left investigators baffled as to the killer's motives. The initial public reaction to the murders attributed to the servant girl Annihilator was one of shock, disbelief, and mounting terror. As news of the attacks spread throughout Austin, residents were gripped by fear, uncertain of when or where the killer would strike next. Doors were bolted, windows barred, and extra precautions taken to safeguard against the elusive assailant. The fear that gripped the city of Austin was palpable, permeating every aspect of daily life and casting a shadow of suspicion over the community. Neighbors eyed each other with suspicion, and strangers were viewed with fear and mistrust. The sense of unease was compounded by the apparent randomness of the attacks, with no discernible pattern or motive to guide investigators in their search for the killer. In the face of such uncertainty and fear, law enforcement officials struggled to maintain order and reassure the public. Despite their best efforts, the servant girl Annihilator continued to elude capture, leaving a trail of death and destruction in his wake. As the body count rose and the city teetered on the brink of hysteria, it became clear that the servant girl Annihilator was unlike any killer Austin had ever seen, and that bringing him to justice would require a level of determination and ingenuity unmatched in the annals of Texas crime history. In the wake of the servant girl Annihilator's reign of terror, law enforcement officials in Austin launched an intensive investigation aimed at apprehending the elusive killer and bringing him to justice. Police officers, detectives, and private investigators worked tirelessly to gather evidence, interview witnesses, and track down leads in their quest to identify the perpetrator responsible for the brutal murders. From the outset, law enforcement officials faced immense pressure to solve the case and restore a sense of safety and security to the city of Austin. As the body count rose and the public clamored for answers, detectives pursued every available avenue of inquiry, from analyzing crime scenes and conducting forensic examinations to interrogating suspects and following up on tips from the community. Despite their best efforts, however, the servant girl Annihilator continued to evade capture, leaving investigators frustrated and perplexed. The killer seemed to strike at random, leaving behind few clues and little evidence to aid in his apprehension. As the months passed and the death toll mounted, it became increasingly clear that solving the case would require a combination of skill, perseverance, and luck. The late 19th century presented numerous challenges and obstacles for law enforcement officials investigating the servant girl Annihilator case. Forensic science was still in its infancy, with few tools and techniques available to aid in the analysis of crime scenes and evidence. DNA analysis, fingerprinting, and other modern investigative techniques were decades away, leaving investigators to rely on more rudimentary methods of detection. Furthermore, the social and cultural attitudes of the time posed significant barriers to the investigation. Racial tensions were high in post-Civil War Texas, with African Americans and other marginalized groups facing systemic discrimination and mistrust from law enforcement. Many of the victims of the servant girl Annihilator were African American women, and their deaths often received less attention and resources from authorities than those of white victims. In addition, the servant girl Annihilator operated in an era before centralized law enforcement agencies and databases, making coordination between different jurisdictions difficult and often ineffective. Information sharing was limited, and suspects could easily evade capture by crossing state lines or disappearing into the vast expanse of the Texas wilderness. Despite the best efforts of law enforcement officials, the identity of the servant girl Annihilator remained shrouded in mystery, and no suspects were ever definitively identified or apprehended. Over the years, numerous individuals were investigated and questioned in connection with the murders, but none were ever charged or convicted of the crimes. Among the most notable suspects was Nathan Elgin, a local cook and laborer who was arrested and briefly held in connection with the murders. Elgin's erratic behavior and criminal record made him a person of interest to investigators, but ultimately, there was insufficient evidence to link him to the crimes, and he was released without charge. Other theories and suspects emerged over the years, ranging from disgruntled lovers and jealous spouses to deranged loners and transient drifters. However, without concrete evidence or eyewitness testimony to corroborate these theories, the case of the servant girl Annihilator remained unsolved, leaving a dark cloud of uncertainty hanging over the city of Austin for decades to come. The victims of the servant girl Annihilator were ordinary women, each with hopes, dreams, and aspirations for the future, tragically cut short by the merciless hand of a serial killer. While their names may have faded from the headlines and their stories lost to history, it is essential to remember that they were more than mere statistics or footnotes in a crime report. They were daughters, sisters, mothers, and friends whose lives were taken from them far too soon. Molly Smith, Eliza Shelley, Irene Cross, Clara Strand, and the other victims of the servant girl Annihilator were not just random targets chosen at whim by a deranged killer. They were hard-working young women who labored tirelessly to support themselves and their families, often in difficult and demanding circumstances. Many of them were immigrants or descendants of slaves, struggling to make a better life for themselves in a society that often offered them little opportunity or hope. Take, for example, Molly Smith, a vivacious young woman with a smile that could light up a room. Born into slavery in rural Texas, Molly had known hardship and adversity from a young age. Yet, despite the odds stacked against her, she remained determined to carve out a better future for herself and her family. She found work as a domestic servant in the bustling city of Austin, where she quickly earned a reputation for her hard work, dedication, and infectious laughter. Eliza Shelley, another victim of the servant girl Annihilator, was a gentle soul with a heart of gold. Born into poverty in the heart of East Austin, Eliza had known little but struggle and strife for most of her young life. Yet despite her humble beginnings, she possessed a quiet strength and resilience that endeared her to all who knew her. She worked long hours as a cook and housekeeper, saving every penny she could in hopes of one day escaping the cycle of poverty that had ensnared her family for generations. The murders attributed to the servant girl Annihilator had a profound and far-reaching impact on the families and communities of the victims. For the families left behind, the loss of a loved one was a devastating blow. shattering their lives and leaving them to grapple with grief, anger, and unanswered questions. Many of the victims were the sole breadwinners for their families, and their deaths plunged their loved ones into financial hardship and uncertainty. In the tight-knit communities of East Austin, where many of the victims lived and worked, the murders sent shockwaves of fear and paranoia rippling through the streets. Neighbors huddled together in fear, barricading their doors and windows against the unseen threat lurking in the darkness. Trust in law enforcement eroded as rumors and speculation spread like wildfire, fueling conspiracy theories and mistrust of authority. Even after the killer had seemingly vanished into thin air, the scars left by his reign of terror lingered on, haunting the collective consciousness of the city and casting a long shadow over its streets. The servant girl Annihilator may have faded into obscurity over the years, but the memories of his victims live on, a testament to the enduring power of hope, resilience, and the indomitable human spirit in the face of unspeakable tragedy. The identity of the servant girl Annihilator remains one of the most enduring mysteries in American crime history, with countless theories and speculations swirling around the elusive killer's true identity. From disgruntled lovers and jealous spouses to deranged loners and transient drifters, the list of potential suspects is as varied as it is extensive. Some theorists have even suggested the involvement of satanic cults or other nefarious organizations, while others believe the killer may have been a law enforcement officer or prominent member of the community. One of the most widely circulated theories posits that the servant girl Annihilator was a local laborer or drifter, possibly suffering from a psychotic break or delusional disorder. According to this theory, the killer's attacks were driven by a deep-seated rage and resentment towards women, stemming from perceived injustices or personal grievances. Others have suggested that the murders may have been part of a larger pattern of violence or ritualistic behavior, with the killer targeting specific victims for reasons known only to him. The motives behind the servant girl Annihilator's reign of terror remain the subject of much speculation and debate among criminologists and psychologists. Some experts believe that the killer's attacks were driven by a combination of sexual sadism and homicidal impulse, with the thrill of violence and power serving as the primary motivators. Others have suggested that the killer may have been motivated by a desire for revenge or retribution, targeting women he perceived as immoral or deserving of punishment. Psychological profiles of the servant girl Annihilator paint a picture of a deeply disturbed and troubled individual, likely suffering from a severe personality disorder or psychosis. The killer's ability to evade capture and elude law enforcement suggests a high degree of cunning and premeditation, coupled with a complete lack of empathy or remorse for his victims. However, without access to modern forensic evidence or first-hand accounts of the killer's behavior, constructing an accurate psychological profile remains a challenging task. Despite the best efforts of law enforcement officials, the investigation into the servant girl Annihilator case yielded few concrete leads or clues that could definitively identify the killer. Numerous suspects were questioned and investigated over the years, but none were ever charged or convicted of the crimes. In some cases, potential witnesses or informants came forward with information that seemed promising at first, but ultimately led nowhere. One of the most tantalizing leads in the case was the discovery of a blood-stained axe near one of the crime scenes, believed to be the murder weapon used by the servant girl Annihilator. However, forensic analysis of the axe failed to yield any conclusive evidence linking it to the killer, leaving investigators back at square one. Other leads, such as eyewitness sightings or suspicious behavior by individuals in the vicinity of the crimes, were similarly inconclusive, leaving investigators frustrated and perplexed. As time passed and the trail grew colder, the servant girl Annihilator case faded from the headlines, consigned to the annals of unsolved mysteries. Yet despite the passage of more than a century, the identity of the killer remains as elusive as ever, a shadowy figure lurking in the darkest corners of American crime history. As we continue to explore the case and sift through the evidence, we are left to wonder, will the truth behind the servant girl Annihilator ever be revealed, or will the identity of this enigmatic killer remain forever shrouded in mystery? The servant girl Annihilator case left an indelible mark on American society, serving as a grim reminder of the dangers that lurk in the shadows of even the most seemingly safe and secure communities. The brutal and seemingly random nature of the killings sent shockwaves of fear and paranoia rippling through the city of Austin and beyond, leaving a lasting legacy of mistrust and suspicion in their wake. In the years following the murders, the servant girl Annihilator case became a cautionary tale, cited by law enforcement officials and criminologists as an example of the need for vigilance and awareness in the face of violent crime. The case also highlighted the shortcomings of the criminal justice system in addressing the root causes of violence and addressing the needs of marginalized communities, sparking renewed calls for reform and accountability. The servant girl Annihilator case has captured the imagination of writers, filmmakers, and storytellers for generations, inspiring countless works of fiction, nonfiction, and folklore. From sensationalized newspaper accounts to lurid dime novels and penny dreadfuls, the case has been the subject of numerous literary and cinematic adaptations, each seeking to capture the chilling essence of the murders and the elusive figure of the killer. In addition to its influence on popular culture, the servant girl Annihilator case has also left its mark on American folklore, becoming the stuff of legend and myth in the collective imagination. Tales of the killer's exploits and the terror he inspired have been passed down through generations, evolving and mutating over time to suit the tastes and sensibilities of each new era. As we reflect on the legacy of the servant girl Annihilator case, we are reminded of the enduring relevance of its lessons to contemporary issues of crime, justice, and social inequality. The case serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked violence and the importance of confronting the root causes of crime, including poverty, discrimination, and mental illness. Moreover, the servant girl Annihilator case underscores the need for a more inclusive and equitable approach to law enforcement and criminal justice, one that prioritizes the needs and concerns of all members of society, regardless of race, gender, or socioeconomic status. By acknowledging the systemic inequalities that underlie patterns of violence and crime, we can begin to address the underlying issues that fuel such tragedies and work towards building a safer and more just society for all. In the end, the servant girl Annihilator case serves as a sobering reminder of the enduring power of violence and the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unspeakable tragedy. As we continue to grapple with the legacy of this enigmatic killer, we are compelled to confront the darkness that lurks within us all and strive to build a future free from fear, violence, and injustice. Throughout this documentary, we have delved deep into the shadowy world of the servant girl Annihilator, seeking to uncover the truth behind one of America's most baffling unsolved mysteries. From the brutal murders that terrorized the city of Austin to the tireless efforts of law enforcement officials to apprehend the killer, we have traced the twists and turns of the investigation, exploring the myriad theories and speculations that have emerged over the years. While the identity of the servant girl Annihilator remains shrouded in mystery, our exploration of the case has shed light on the broader social and historical context in which the murders occurred, highlighting the enduring legacy of violence and inequality that continues to shape American society to this day. By humanizing the victims and examining the impact of their deaths on their families and communities, we have sought to honor their memories and ensure that they are not forgotten in the annals of history. The servant girl Annihilator case serves as a sobering reminder of the dangers that lurk in the shadows of even the most seemingly safe and secure communities. By remembering and understanding the case, we are able to confront the darkness that lies within us all and strive to build a future free from fear, violence, and injustice. Moreover, by acknowledging the systemic inequalities that underlie patterns of violence and crime, we can work towards building a more inclusive and equitable society for all. Furthermore, the servant girl annihilator case serves as a cautionary tale, urging us to remain vigilant and aware of the dangers that surround us. By learning from the mistakes of the past and seeking to address the root causes of violence and crime, we can work towards building a safer and more just world for future generations. As we bring our exploration of the servant girl annihilator case to a close, we are left with more questions than answers. Yet rather than viewing this as a failure, we should see it as an opportunity for further research and exploration into this fascinating but forgotten chapter of American history. By continuing to investigate the case and uncover new evidence, we may one day be able to finally unmask the identity of the elusive killer and bring closure to the families of the victims. In conclusion, the servant girl annihilator case stands as a chilling reminder of the fragility of human life and the enduring legacy of violence and inequality in American society. By remembering and understanding the case, we honor the memories of the victims and reaffirm our commitment to building a future free from fear, violence, and injustice.